This is a story from the year 1872 in the Wyoming Territory, and I, Elias Redfeather, carry it as it was whispered along porches and fence rails, where women remembered it with tears in their eyes. For it is not a tale of riches or power, but of a door, a shawl of night, and a cowboy who would not leave. The dawn had barely brushed the horizon when Anna May Hollister opened her cottage door a crack, her fingers trembling as she clutched the frame, expecting only the chill of morning and the emptiness that had haunted her since the day Nathan Clay, the merchant's son, had left her waiting at the altar with a veil in her hands and shame burning her cheeks. Instead, she saw him. Jameson Cole, the quiet cowboy with dust on his boots and a coat draped across his shoulders, sitting slouched but awake, hat in his lap, eyes steady as if he had been carved from the night itself. He rose slowly when he saw her, as though to prove that every hour he had sat there was not a rumor, but a vow in flesh. "Morning, Miss Hollister," he said simply, his voice carrying no demand, only quiet truth. Anna's breath hitched, her heart clashing with the memory of every man who had walked away, her father buried, Nathan gone, neighbors who had turned their heads when she passed. "Why are you here?" she whispered. Jameson shifted, the boards of her porch creaking under his weight. "Because I wanted you to know I wouldn't leave, not like the others." The words struck deeper than any declaration shouted in a church, for they were not wrapped in grand promises, but in the dust of his boots and the circles beneath his eyes. Behind her, the cottage was silent, a small home once meant to be filled with children's laughter, but left hollow by abandonment. Before her stood a man who had chosen silence and endurance over speeches, and she did not know whether to weep or laugh. "You're a fool," she said, but her voice cracked on the word. Jameson's lips curved in the faintest smile, though sorrow lingered in his eyes. "Maybe so, but I'd rather be a fool who stayed than a wise man who ran." Elias Redfeather. I have carried many tales of men who spoke too much and did too little, but the stories that endure are of those who said little and stood where they were needed. Anna pressed the door tighter against her frame, as if shielding her heart. "The town will laugh," she murmured. "They already do," Jameson answered, "but they'll tire of laughter sooner than I'll tire of waiting." She looked at his hands, scarred from rope and rain, steady on his hat brim, and saw not pity but resolve. A man shaped by losses he would not name yet carried plainly in his silence. The wind stirred her hair, and with it came the murmur of neighbors beginning to rise, footsteps in the street, whispers already turning. She wanted to close the door and shut it all away, but the weight of his vigil, the hours carved into his eyes, held her still. "I can't let you waste yourself here," she said, her throat aching. Jameson's reply was quiet as a prayer. "Waiting isn't wasted when it's for someone worth it." The words left her trembling, for they were too large to carry alone, and she closed the door not to banish him, but to press her back against it. Tears slipping down her face as she realized she did not hear retreating footsteps. The boards outside creaked as he sat again. The dawn brightened, and the door between them pulsed with new meaning. No longer only a barrier, but a promise waiting to be tested. And thus the story began, with a door closed against the world, yet held by a man who vowed, without flourish, that he would not leave. The sun had climbed higher by the time Anna May Hollister dared peek through her window, and already the whispers had begun along the street where neighbors swept their stoops and watched with sly curiosity, for news traveled faster than any train. Nathan Clay had left her at the altar, and now Jameson Cole, the quiet cowboy, had planted himself on her porch like a sentinel in dust and denim. Anna pulled the curtain tight, her cheeks burning as the memory replayed, the veil slipping from her hands, the pastor's voice breaking, the laughter behind her as Nathan rode off to chase a richer bride. That humiliation had not died. It clung to her like a second skin. She pressed a hand against her chest, hearing the faint scrape of his boots outside, proof that Jameson had not moved. Foolish, she thought. Foolish man wasting his hours on a woman already marked as unwanted. Yet in her heart, a small flame flickered at the thought he might be there not from pity, but from something steadier. Outside, Mrs. Cartwright's voice carried sharp and shrill, "He'll be gone by supper, mark me. Men don't stay past the shine of a sunrise." A chorus of agreement followed, and Anna's throat ached, for she feared they were right. Still, when she cracked the door, Jameson looked up, eyes heavy with lack of sleep yet clear as river water. "You've been here all night," she whispered, as if naming it aloud might undo it. He nodded, no apology in his face. "I said I wouldn't leave." She wanted to slam the door, to end the ache of expectation, but instead she asked, "Do you think this will make them respect me? Sitting out here like some guard dog?" His jaw tightened. Not respect, but maybe they'll learn what it looks like when a man keeps his word. Elias Redfeather. There are wounds that cannot be mended by gold or by time, but only by the steady hand of another who dares to stand where others have fled. Anna studied him, the set of his shoulders, the quiet strength of his presence, and for a breath she longed to believe. But belief was a dangerous thing for a woman once betrayed. "You don't know me," she said softly. Jameson's reply came like stone laid upon stone. "I know enough. You were left, and I won't add my name to the list of those who walked away." A wagon rattled past, the driver sneering loud enough for them both. "She's cursed, Cole. You'll learn soon." Jameson didn't move, didn't answer, only turned his gaze back to Anna, as if the world's scorn were less weight than the moment between them. She swallowed, closing the door slowly, not in anger, but because she feared the flood of hope rising within her chest. Inside the stillness of her cottage, she pressed her back to the wood, listening to the faint scrape of his boots as he shifted. Settling again to wait. And for the first time since the veil slipped from her hands, Anna felt that maybe the laughter of others could not bury her completely, not while a single man refused to walk away. The day stretched long, but the thought of him outside kept her trembling, torn between fear of being fooled again and the fragile seed of faith that perhaps this time, when she opened her door, someone would still be there. By the time shadows began to stretch across the dirt street, Anna May Hollister could bear it no longer. The sound of his boots shifting outside had become a drumbeat in her chest, a reminder that while the world expected him gone, he still lingered like a prayer pressed against the threshold. She pulled the latch, her heart racing, and opened the door wide enough to meet his gaze. Jameson Cole rose from where he had sat, dust on his coat, eyes steady as iron beneath the brim of his hat. "You're still here," she whispered, half accusation, half wonder. "I told you I would be," he answered, his voice rough but calm. "But why?" The word tore from her throat before she could hold it back, sharp with all the hurt of the veil falling from her hands and the laughter that had followed her since. "Why would you waste your time here, outside a door that's been shut against the world?" Jameson stepped closer, not enough to breach her space, but enough that his presence filled the doorway. "Because you shouldn't have to face a locked door alone," he said, and the simple truth of it shook her more than any fine speech could have. Anna clutched the frame, her knuckles white. "You don't know what it is to be shamed before an entire town, to have your worth stripped from you in a single hour." His jaw worked as he looked away briefly, as if steadying something buried deep. "I know enough," he murmured. "I've seen what it does when no one stays. I won't be another name on the list of men who left you standing." Elias Redfeather. When a woman's heart has been bruised by betrayal, words can sound like wind in a canyon. But when a man roots himself at her door, the silence between them grows heavier than any vow. Anna blinked, her throat tight, because his words cut through years of loneliness in a way that frightened her. "They'll mock you," she said softly. "They already do," he replied. "But I'd rather their laughter than your tears." A wagon creaked past, and a pair of boys jeered, "He's waiting for scraps!" Anna flinched, but Jameson didn't turn his head. Instead, he held her eyes, letting the insults fall like rain on stone. She wanted to slam the door, to shield herself from the shame of being pitied, but the steadiness in his gaze rooted her in place. "I don't want your pity," she whispered fiercely. Jameson's voice gentled. "Then don't take it as pity. Take it as proof. Proof that not all men walk away." She stared at him, breath shallow, until the weight of her own trembling drove her back a step. She closed the door again, not in anger but in fear of what believing him might cost her. Yet as the latch clicked, she pressed her palms to the wood and stood there listening, waiting for retreating footsteps that never came. Instead, she heard him settle once more, the porch creaking under his weight, and the sound of his quiet breath carried through the thin wall. Steady as a heartbeat. Inside, Anna slid to the floor, tears spilling through her lips curved toward something dangerously close to hope, for she realized she wasn't merely waiting for the world to forget her shame. She was waiting to see if Jameson Cole meant the vow he had spoken without words, a vow carved into the dust outside her door. The following morning dawned pale and sharp, and already the porches of Highfield were alive with whispers. Women sweeping steps or shelling beans leaned to one another, their eyes darting toward Anna Mae Hollister's cottage, where Jameson Cole sat again, hat tipped low, but gaze steady on the street, as if daring the world to tell him his vigil was wasted. "He'll be gone before the week's end," one said, shaking her head. "Men don't stay for shame." Another, older and lined by years of disappointments, murmured, "Maybe this one will. Sometimes a fool's heart is stronger than a clever man's pride." Anna pulled back her curtain, hearing every word though the glass dulled their tone. Her chest ached at the weight of their judgment, yet a sliver of warmth lodged beneath her ribs, for though they spoke of folly, they spoke of him still being there. She opened the door, the boards groaning, and Jameson stood, brushing dust from his coat. "Morning, Miss Hollister," he said, as if he had slept in comfort rather than against her porch rail. She studied him, her voice taut. "You'll ruin yourself sitting here like a watchdog." He shook his head, calm as stone. "Better to ruin myself waiting than live easy walking away." Elias Redfeather. I have told of men who boasted loudly but scattered like leaves, and of men who said little but planted their feet so firmly that whole towns bent around their silence. Anna's throat tightened. "They're laughing at you," she said, motioning toward the women gathered across the street. Jameson's eyes flicked to them, unreadable, before returning to hers. "Then let them laugh. It costs me less than it cost you when Nathan left." His words struck like a bell, the memory of that veil falling to the church floor burning fresh in her mind. She wanted to recoil, to tell him never to speak it again, but instead her eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I gave him everything, my trust, my promise, my place in this town, and he left me hollow." Jameson's gaze softened, though his voice held firm. "Then let me be the one who proves hollow isn't the end of your story." Anna bit her lip, torn between the sting of disbelief and the dangerous rise of hope. The gossips across the street leaned closer, hungry for spectacle, and the humiliation threatened to choke her. But Jameson did not flinch beneath their gaze. He only stepped back to the porch rail. Settling once more, boots planted steady, as though declaring to every whispering mouth that he was not moving. Anna closed the door gently, pressing her back to it, listening to the creak of the boards as he sat again. For the first time she realized that each hour he remained was no longer a weight of pity, but a shield against the laughter of others. Outside, the voices dulled, for the town was learning that mockery grew tiring when a man refused to bend, and inside, Anna wept softly. Not from shame this time, but from the fragile birth of something she dared not name. By the fifth evening, the town's curiosity had grown restless, for Jameson Cole had not moved from Anna May Hollister's door, and in a place where gossip was coin, patience was short. That was when Nathan Clay returned, his polished boots striking the boardwalk outside the general store, his vest gleaming, his hair slicked with the pride of a man who believed the world still owed him its admiration. Whispers darted ahead of him like sparrows. Nathan's back. The runaway groom. And soon he stood in the market square, cane tapping, his eyes narrowed toward Anna's small cottage, where Jameson sat steady as a stone carved from the hills. Nathan's lips curled into a sneer. "Still there?" he called across the street, his voice meant to carry. "Guarding what I left behind, you'll find there's a reason I walked away." The crowd hushed, some leaning closer, others pretending not to watch, but every ear tilted. Jameson rose, his frame tall and unshaken, dust clinging to his coat, yet dignity radiating like a flame. "There's a reason you walked away," he said, his voice low but sharp. "And it was cowardice. She gave you her trust, and you threw it to the dirt." Nathan laughed, brittle, trying to mask the tremor in his pride. "She was unfit, everyone knows it. A woman with nothing to bring but shame? Why would any man stay?" Anna, inside, pressed her palm to the door, trembling at the venom that reached her even through the wood. Jameson's eyes did not waver. Because a man who measures worth by coin or whispers is no man at all. She gave more by standing in her truth than you'll ever give hiding behind your father's purse. Elias Redfeather. I have seen men mocked for choosing mercy, and I have seen the laughter shrivel when mercy proved stronger than gold. Nathan's sneer faltered as a murmur rose among the townsfolk, women shaking their heads, a ranch hand muttering, "He's right." Nathan's cane struck the dirt with angry force. "Stay then. Waste your nights for a woman ruined, but when the town spits your name, don't say you weren't warned." He turned sharply, storming back toward the saloon, his pride limping with every step. Jameson watched him go, then looked back at the door that remained closed but listening. His voice gentled, meant for her ears, though the street could hear. "I will not leave, Anna May. Not for his laughter. Not for theirs. I'll be here when the sun falls and when it rises." Inside, Anna's tears spilled unchecked. For years she had prayed for someone to speak her name without shame, and now it had been spoken with strength before all. She clutched her discarded veil from the drawer where she had hidden it, fingers trembling over the lace. And for the first time since it fell to the church floor, she wondered if perhaps it had not been buried, but only waiting for the man who would give it back its meaning. Outside, Jameson sat once more, the night settling around him, his silhouette etched against her door like a vow the darkness itself could not erase. The night after Nathan Clay's venom, Anna May Hollister did not sleep. She sat at her small table staring at the lamp's flame, the discarded veil folded before her, her ears straining for the faint creak of the porch boards that meant Jameson Cole still kept his vigil. She told herself she should ignore it, that she should not lean on a man's stubborn mercy. Yet when dawn broke pale across the plains, and she opened her door a crack, her breath caught at the sight of a small bundle resting on the step, half a loaf of bread wrapped in cloth, warm still, and beside it a tin cup filled with water. Jameson sat nearby, shoulders heavy from the long night but his eyes steady, and he tipped his hat as though it were the most natural thing in the world. "Figured you might need something before the day carried you off," he said simply. Anna bent, lifting the bread with trembling hands, the warmth sinking into her palms. "I didn't ask you for this," she whispered. Jameson's gaze softened. "You shouldn't have to ask. A door should never open onto nothing." Her throat tightened, and though she wanted to slam the door against him, against the unbearable stir of hope, she found herself instead carrying the bread inside and breaking it with shaking fingers, tasting salt on her lips that came not from the crust, but from her tears. Elias Redfeather. I have seen grand gifts laid at women's feet, jewels and deeds meant to bind them, yet it is the smallest offering, a crust of bread, a sip of water, that reveals the true weight of devotion. Later that day, as Anna hung laundry in the yard, neighbors paused to watch, their eyes drawn to the bread crusts left drying on her sill. Mrs. Cartwright sniffed. "He'll turn her into a beggar's tale," while another woman murmured, "No, he's turning her into something none of us expected." A woman guarded. Anna flushed beneath their gaze, ashamed of her hunger, yet stirred by the memory of his quiet words. When dusk came again, she stepped out, veil tucked beneath her arm, and looked at him where he sat carving wood with his pocket knife, his posture easy, but his eyes lifting to hers at once. "Why?" she demanded, though her voice quavered. "Why give me food as if I were helpless?" Jameson set the knife down, his tone even. "Not helpless, just tired. I know what it is to go without. To hear your stomach remind you you've been forgotten. I won't let you feel that while I sit outside your door." She blinked, swallowing hard. "You shame me with pity." His voice sharpened just enough to pierce. "Not pity, proof. Proof that I see you worth the wait." The words struck so deep that she turned back into the house, unable to face him longer, yet she did not slam the door. She left it ajar, just wide enough that the lamp's glow fell across the porch where he sat. And when she pressed her back against the wall, the bread heavy in her belly, she realized that for the first time since Nathan's betrayal, she had eaten not in silence but in company, with a man whose loyalty echoed louder than the town's laughter. The veil on her lap no longer felt like a shroud, but like a question still waiting to be answered. By the seventh day, the story of Jameson Cole waiting outside Anna May Hollister's door had become the town's favorite firewood, tossed from porch to porch until every ember of gossip burned hot. Men outside the saloon jeered that he lingered for her land, while women at the millinery shop whispered that he pitied her, and children dared one another to run past her cottage at night just to see if the cowboy still sat on the steps. Anna heard it all through the thin walls of her home, each word clawing at the fragile hope that had begun to rise within her. She pressed her veil flat against the table, the lace crumpling beneath her palms, as if she could iron out the shame with sheer force. That evening, as dusk spread violet across the plains, she opened the door a fraction, and sure enough, Jameson was there. Dust on his boots, eyes shadowed from sleepless nights, but his posture as steady as the day he first sat. "You must stop this," she whispered urgently. "Every mouth in town is wagging. They think you want what Nathan wanted, what every man before him wanted." Jameson rose, slow and calm, and met her eyes through the sliver of the door. "Let them think," he said simply. "Their words aren't mine." Anna's heart thudded. Don't you see? Their words bury me, Jameson. Every whisper adds another stone, and soon I'll be lost beneath them. His jaw tightened. Then let me carry the stones. Elias Redfeather. Towns are cruel architects, quick to stack walls of rumor around the weak, but sometimes one soul stands in the breach, not with speeches, but with shoulders broad enough to bear the weight meant for another. Anna trembled, half angry, half undone. You don't understand, she hissed. I'm the girl men leave. I'm the girl no one stays for. Nathan proved it in front of the church, and the whole town saw it. Jameson stepped closer, his voice low but fierce. I understand more than you think. My father left when I was 10. He walked away from my mother's door and never returned. I swore then I would not be that man. If I say I'll stay, Anna May, I'll wear the laughter, I'll wear the shame, but I will not wear the sin of walking away. Her breath caught, the weight of his confession slamming into her heart. She searched his face, lit only by the lantern glow spilling from her window, and saw not pity, but a vow carved deep into his bones. The voices from the street drifted nearer. Cruel and careless. Bet he'll be gone by tomorrow. No man stays forever. Anna looked at Jameson, trembling. And what if they're right? His reply came without hesitation. Then let tomorrow prove me false. She could not bear the steadiness of his eyes, so she shut the door softly, pressing her forehead against the wood, tears slipping down her cheeks. But she did not feel buried this time. For though the town's voices still hissed beyond her walls, she could hear another sound stronger, the steady scrape of his boots as he settled once more against her porch, a sound like a heartbeat that promised she was not alone. And in that fragile sound, something deep within her stirred, as if the veil folded on her table had begun to breathe again. The night grew colder, the kind that seeped into walls and whispered through cracks, and Anna May Hollister lit her lamp with trembling hands, though her thoughts burned hotter than the flame. She could not rid herself of the image of Jameson Cole's eyes when he spoke of his father leaving, the raw truth in a voice that rarely wasted words. At last, unable to sit still, she opened the door again. He was there, of course, as steady as the boards beneath him. Whittling a piece of cedar with his pocket knife, the shavings scattered like pale petals at his boots. He looked up when she stepped out, but he did not rise this time, perhaps sensing she had not come to drive him away. You should be asleep, she murmured, hugging her shawl tight around her shoulders. He set the knife aside, his gaze thoughtful. Sleep can wait. Some promises can't. She eased onto the porch step, careful to keep a space between them, though her heart raced at the nearness. Tell me, she whispered, about your mother. His breath drew deep, as if steadying, and then he began. She was gentle, Anna May. She kept the door open for a man who swore he'd return, but he never did. Night after night, she waited, lamp burning, until her eyes grew old with it. I was a boy watching from the shadows, learning that sometimes waiting breaks a soul instead of saving it. I swore I'd never let a door close on someone I loved. If I stand here till my bones give way, it'll be worth more than walking off like he did. The confession fell heavy in the night air, raw and unpolished, and Anna pressed a hand to her mouth, tears threatening. You stay here, she whispered, not just for me, but for the boy you once were. He nodded once, his eyes steady. For the boy who lost a father, and for the woman who lost her dignity in a church where she should have been honored. Elias Redfeather. Some men carry guns as proof of their strength. Others carry scars. But the truest carry memory, turning it into a vow they live day after day until even the earth must bend to it. Anna's heart twisted with pain and wonder, for here was a man who had no riches, no title, No promise of ease, only a strength rooted in grief and molded into loyalty. She wanted to believe, but fear still clutched her. "And if I can't open the door?" she asked, voice trembling. His reply was calm, unwavering. "Then I'll sit outside it until you do, whether it takes a day, a year, or the rest of my life." The words lodged deep, dangerous in their simplicity, for they stripped away excuses. Anna rose quickly, retreating inside before her tears betrayed her, but she left the door cracked wider than before, the lamplight spilling out to where Jameson sat. He leaned back against the post, the glow catching his profile, his expression quiet as the night itself. And when Anna pressed her forehead to the wall just inside, veil clutched to her chest. She realized that for the first time since Nathan had abandoned her, she no longer felt like a woman waiting to be discarded, but a woman being waited for, as if her worth had been rewritten on the very boards of her porch. By the 9th day, Jameson Cole's vigil had become a spectacle, drawing townsfolk as surely as a fair, for Highfield loved nothing more than a story it could watch unravel. The saloon doors swung all evening with men spilling out to jeer, and women leaned on railings whispering, their parasols bobbing like vultures circling. Anna May Hollister sat inside, hands pressed over her ears, but the noise carried through the thin walls. "He's still there! Fool cowboy wasting himself on a cast-off bride!" Laughter cut sharp, and Anna's shame pressed heavier with each peal. At last she pulled the curtain and saw Jameson standing now, straight-backed at her door, hat tucked under his arm, his expression neither anger nor shame, but a calm resolve that made the taunts clang hollow. Then Nathan Clay himself strode into the square, proud as a rooster, cane tapping on the boards. The crowd hushed for him, eager for venom. He lifted his voice. "So the whole town sees it now, a man guarding a door no one else wanted. Tell me, Cole, how long before you tire of pretending she's worth the watch?" Gasps fluttered, and Anna gripped her veil, her breath breaking, for Nathan's cruelty was not just aimed at Jameson, but at the wound still raw within her. Jameson's gaze cut steady, his voice deep enough to still the air. "I don't pretend. I know her worth, because when the world turned from me, she laid her shawl." He stopped, correcting himself. "Her kindness, in places where no one else dared, and I will not walk away." Murmurs swept through the crowd, some heads nodding, others frowning. Nathan's smile cracked. "You'll sit here forever then, until your hair grays? She'll never open that door." Jameson stepped forward, his shadow spilling long. "Then I'll grow gray in front of it. Better that than live with the shame of leaving her like you did." Elias Redfeather. "I have told of duels fought with bullets, but the fiercest duels are fought with memory, when one man's cruelty meets another man's vow, and the whole town must choose which story it will remember." Nathan sputtered, raising his cane, but a ranch hand in the crowd barked, "Enough! You left her, Clay. Don't sneer at the one who stayed." A woman muttered, "Better a fool who waits than a coward who runs." The tide shifted, voices once mocking now whispering respect. Nathan's face burned crimson as he swung his cane against the ground and stormed away, his boots clattering down the street. The crowd lingered, eyes on Jameson, some with awe, others with unease, but none laughing now. Anna pressed her back against the door inside, tears streaming silently. She had begged God for dignity, for one voice to rise against her shame, and now she had heard it thunder in the mouth of a man who claimed nothing for himself. Her fingers tightened around the veil, no longer the emblem of abandonment, but a fragile promise, yet unfulfilled. Outside, Jameson returned to his place at her porch rail, settling without flourish, his presence now defended not only by his own will, but by the shifting witness of a town that had seen a vow spoken in dust and dared not laugh at it any more. The night crept in, and for the first time, Anna wondered if the door she had kept bolted was not protecting her at all, but keeping out the very redemption her soul craved. That evening the air in Highfield hung thick, as though the town itself waited to see whether Jameson Cole's vigil would finally break. But when the moon rose silver over the rooftops, he was still there, seated at Anna May Hollister's porch, his hat in his lap, and his eyes fixed not on the street but on her door. Inside, Anna paced the small room, veil clutched against her chest, her heart pounding with each creak of the boards outside. She could not bear the pressure of silence any longer, and with trembling hands she unlatched the door. The hinge groaned softly, and Jameson rose, straight as a soldier, his shadow falling long into her lamplight. "Why?" she asked again, her voice breaking, the same question she had asked every night yet never answered. "Why would you tie your life to mine when you could ride anywhere, to someone untouched by shame?" Jameson's chest rose slow, his words steady as stone. "Because shame isn't what I see when I look at you, Anna May. I see a woman who stood in front of a church with courage enough to bear laughter, and I see the door she bolted against every man who walked away. I don't mean to break that door. I mean to honor it until you know I'm not leaving." Tears blurred her sight. "And if I never open it?" His voice deepened, heavy with vow. "Then I'll keep sitting, keep waiting, until the day this door is laid in the earth with me. I'll not be the man who left." Elias Redfeather. In every life there is a night when words burn brighter than fire, when a vow spoken low carries farther than any shout, and those who hear it know a turning has come. Anna's breath hitched, her hands shaking around the veil. She whispered, "The town says you're a fool." His mouth curved in the faintest smile. "Then let me be the town's fool, but yours alone." She pressed her forehead to the frame, her body quaking with the war between fear and the aching hunger for belief. Outside, the murmurs of late passers-by drifted. "He's still there. He'll never give up." But Jameson did not look at them. His eyes stayed only on her, calm and patient as the night itself. The silence stretched, heavy and tender, until Anna could not endure it. She closed the door again, but not harshly, only to lean her back against it, her tears falling into the veil she clutched. And though the door stood shut, she knew it no longer marked her prison but her choice, for beyond it sat a man whose vow had made the whole town witness that she was worth the wait. That night, as she drifted into restless sleep, she dreamed not of Nathan's mocking smile, nor the laughter of the church, but of a cowboy seated steady at her door, his presence like a lamp that refused to go dark. The morning after Jameson Cole's vow, Highfield stirred differently, for word of his declaration had rolled through every alley and porch, and now folk stepped aside with a curious hush when they passed Anna May Hollister's cottage. Some women nodded faintly in respect, others shook their heads at what they still called folly, but none laughed aloud anymore. Inside her small house, Anna stood before the mirror with her discarded veil in hand, her reflection pale and trembling. She thought of the nights he had sat, the bread he had left, the shame he had shouldered like armor, and she whispered to herself, "No man has ever waited for me, not like this." Her chest ached with the truth, yet fear still coiled sharp, warning her not to trust what could break her again. At dusk she lit her lamp, her fingers trembling on the match, and when she opened the door, a crack, she found Jameson there, seated upright, boots planted like roots, eyes lifting gently as if he had expected her. She stepped out, veil tucked in her arms, and whispered, "The others left me when I needed them most. Why should I believe you're different?" His gaze held hers without flinching. "Because I've already proven it. Not by words, but by staying when it cost me pride, when it cost me sleep, when it cost me the laughter of this town. Anna May, love isn't spoken once at an altar. It's spoken every night you wait, and every morning you're still there. Elias Redfeather, I have carried tales of grand weddings and promises etched in ink, but none bore more weight than the quiet vow of a man who proved love not by saying it, but by staying through scorn. Anna's tears spilled as she clutched the veil. I've lived behind this door, afraid of opening it because each time I did, the world stole more of me. But when I listen to you out here, I feel like I'm being given back what I lost. Jameson rose slowly, his hands empty, but his voice steady. Then let me give it back, not in secret but before them all. Open the door, Anna May. Let them see you are not alone. Her heart pounded so loud she thought the whole street must hear it. She looked back into her home, at the lonely table, the unlit hearth, the emptiness she had carried since Nathan's betrayal, and then she turned back to him, trembling. If I open it, she whispered, you must not ever leave. His voice broke low, firm as steel. If I leave, may the Lord himself close the ground over me. For a long moment she hesitated, the veil heavy in her hands, the crowd across the street holding its breath as lanterns flickered in the dusk. Then, with tears streaming, she lifted the latch. The door swung wide, and the lamplight spilled across Jameson's frame. He stepped forward not with triumph, but with reverence, his eyes shining as though the world itself had changed. And for Anna May, it had. For the first time since the veil fell in shame, she felt her life beginning instead of ending. The night Anna May Hollister opened her door, the town of Highfield felt it as though a wind had shifted, sweeping through porches and alleys, carrying whispers that mercy had won a place where cruelty once ruled. Jameson Cole stood in the doorway, hat pressed against his chest, his eyes filled not with conquest but with quiet awe, as if he feared even to breathe, lest the moment vanish. Anna trembled, the veil trembling with her, then slowly she lifted it, placing the lace not on her own head, but into his roughened hands. This was supposed to crown me in shame, she whispered, tears falling freely. But if you will have me, let it be a crown of honor instead. Jameson's chest heaved as he drew the veil across her shoulders, draping it not as a token of loss, but as the mantle of a bride chosen in dignity. The crowd that had gathered hushed to a reverent silence, children gripping their mothers' skirts. Men bowing their heads as if they too felt the weight of vows, unspoken, yet sealed in dust and daylight. The pastor, who had once watched her left abandoned at the altar, stepped forward, voice solemn. If you both mean these vows, then speak them plain. Jameson clasped Anna's trembling hands. I vow, he said, his voice rough with emotion, to sit at your door as long as breath is in me, to guard what others mocked, to stay when every man before me fled. This I swear. Anna's lips quivered, but her voice rang clear. And I vow never to doubt the one who stayed, to honor the man who turned my shame into hope. This I swear. Elias Redfeather. Some tales end in triumph, loud and thunderous, but the ones that endure in old hearts are quieter, the ones where faith, proved night after night, blossoms into love that no laughter can wither. The pastor lifted his hand. Then by the witness of this town and the blessing of God, I declare you husband and wife. A cheer broke, not raucous but warm, rising like a hymn across the square. Tears streaked cheeks that had once sneered, and voices that had mocked now whispered blessings. Jameson bent, pressing a reverent kiss to Anna's brow beneath the veil, and she closed her eyes, her body finally at rest. Together they stepped into the cottage, the door wide behind them, lantern glowing in welcome. And though it was a humble home, the doorway itself shone like a monument, No longer the place of rejection, but the place where devotion proved itself stronger than gold or gossip. That night the veil was folded not in shame, but in joy, and the door that had been bolted for so long remained open, as if to tell the world it would never again be closed to love. And so it was, in the year 1872, in the Wyoming Territory, that a young woman once left alone found her dignity restored, not by wealth or pride, but by the simple truth of a cowboy who waited. And I, Elias Redfeather, your storyteller, leave this tale to you as proof that mercy endures when all else fades, and that sometimes the greatest vow is not spoken inside a church, but kept at a door until it opens. Please like, share, and subscribe to support more true-hearted stories on Stories Left Behind. If you had seen him waiting outside her door all night, would you have believed he'd stay? Or thought he'd leave by morning? Tell us in the comments.